Good morning. How are you? Welcome back. I'm so glad to see you. So, I thought I'd start off the new year, as promised, with a book review. And this is the book. It's called Attached. And the subtitle is The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love by Levine and Heller. So the copyright is 2010. It's not a more recent book. And attachment theory, which it talks about, is not a new theory. The theory of attachment theory came out with John Bowlby in 1969, and tons of research on it. It's a very useful theory, very useful tool, I find, in understanding everyday interactions. So not only is it useful for therapists to understand like a bird's eye view of how dynamics work in through the lens of attachment theory, but I think everybody should know this. And so this is written in very plain language. It's very easy to understand. It's not like super academic. Um, very easy to read for the average person, I think. And that's why I like it so much, and it's probably why it sold over 2 million copies sold. Is what it says there. It's probably tons more now. Anyway, what can I say? The book is written in 4 parts. There's 12 chapters in it, and so the 4 parts kind of section off how to deliver the theory and how to teach it, basically. So the crux of it is how we interact with each other. And a lot of how we interact with each other is based on how we learn to interact with people at a very young age. This is why I happen to think, aside from the book review itself, I happen to think that things like this, as well as many other things, can and should be taught at elementary school levels and high school levels. But at the very least, if you wanted to take some of this information, look up things about attachment theory, anxious and avoidant styles, which we're going to talk about, journal about it, write about it, get some point forms and some information about it so you can understand. Are you more avoidant? Are you more anxious? Do you have a blend of the two? What are the circumstances under which you prefer to be more avoidant? Are you more anxious? Do you attract partners that have one style or the other? Or are you more secure? Those are the three styles that are talked about in this book. So, decoding relationship behavior is the first chapter, and it talks about the differences between secure, avoidant, and anxious styles. Um, it then talks about how, in chapter 2, dependency is not a bad word. We tend to look at being dependent on other people as a weakness, that no, I'm an island unto myself and I can do all by myself and I don't need anyone because that would mean you're needy, right? So it explains how dependency is not a bad word. We are humans, we are interdependent. We may not want to rely on someone else to do things for us, and it may be disrespectful, for instance, or using somebody else to oblige them to do things for us. But it's not about being needy, it's about being interdependent. So we all help each other out, right? And that's okay. So the book actually explains how, with a secure attachment, when you grow up feeling like your needs are met, like as a child, you cry and your needs are met. A person, your parent, your caretaker will come and soothe you, give you your food, give you clean your bum, um, make sure that you're safe and warm and entertained and mentally stimulated and so on. When you have those basic needs met, and not only just basic needs, but you have nurturing and socialization and learning opportunities and so on. When those needs are met, you grow up with more of a secure attachment style. When you have a secure attachment style, you are more likely to be able to go out and deal with the world effectively as opposed to being needy. So, isn't that interesting? So, what has been taught to parents in the past, um, and Gabor Mate will talk about this as he talks. I'm referring to his talks when he talks about his book, The Myth of Normal. he talks about how parents in past decades had, been told, ignore your child, let them cry it out, and so the child learns that their needs won't be met, right? And so that then um, contributes to an unhealthy attachment style, whether it develops into avoidant or anxious. Um, that becomes the template for how you interact with the world. Right? Okay, so dependency, not a bad word. I'm just going through some notes here. Let's see. What else do I like about this book? Um, it talks about how to look at yourself and find out what your attachment style is, right? So there's a chapter that gives you a questionnaire, and as you go through these questions and you answer them in a self-reflective way, you can find out what your attachment style is. So that's really important. Know thyself, right? Then there's another chapter on finding out what your partner's attachment style is. Now, your partner might be somebody who you're with right now, and you might look at perhaps partners in the past to see if there's a pattern in who you attract, the kind of person that you're attracted to. And that's really important to understand the patterns and why you're attracted to those sort of styles. So that's the next chapter. Then we're going into part 2, and it talks about how these attachments, these 3 attachment styles, how they manifest in everyday life. So if you have an anxious attachment style, you're more vigilant, you're more you see emotional changes in people really quickly, a little bit more like hypersensitive, perhaps. There's more of a higher degree of accuracy, it says, in reading cues. However, um, there's a tendency to jump to conclusion about what those cues mean and interpret them. That's an anxious attachment style. So you might misinterpret the cues and you might personalize it. Um, yeah, an example of that would be somebody comes in and doesn't look at you as you say hello in the office, and you take that personally. They must be upset with me. I must have done something wrong or whatever. Um, and that may not be the case, or maybe 50 other reasons why that person kind of came in and was in a rush. Maybe they have a taxi waiting, maybe there's a lot of other, maybe they didn't hear you, maybe they have their earbuds in. There may be a lot of reasons why that person didn't kind of do the thing that you would have anticipated, but you take it personally. And so that would be an example of perhaps an anxious attachment style. Let's see. The book also talks about some deactivating strategies. So when you have an avoidant attachment style, you have some deactivating strategies. So when you want to avoid attachment, right? Somebody comes to you and it's like, oh no, that person is too clingy, that person is too needy, right? They might just be saying, I want to spend some time with you, or holding your hand, or walking beside you. So you want to then deactivate, you want to push them away as an avoidant attachment style because it's, closeness is uncomfortable. And so avoidant examples are given in the book as well, like walking a few steps away from the person you're kind of walking with would be a deactivating because you can't feel comfortable with that kind of closeness. Another thing might be flirting with others, because that would then push your partner away, right? That would be you're getting too close, so you flirt with other people. You might not share the same bed, that kind of thing. So it's pushing away behaviors. Those are called deactivating strategies in an avoidant style. The attachment style has activating, they get activated, and so the avoidant would be, they use deactivating strategies. I also really like this book because it talks about ways to stop pushing that love away, how it really encourages a secure attachment, moving from an avoidant or moving from an anxious attachment style, and how to adopt more of a secure attachment style. So Um, it it does talk about how attachment style basically is stable, but it's also fluid. So you are who you are, you've grown up how you grew up, but you can also adopt and, sort of stepwise with incremental changes, you can move towards a more secure attachment when you do some self-reflection and take note of where you're at and where you want to go. That's the crux with therapy, right? You want to talk about how you can move into a more secure attachment style and hopefully also influence your partnership and both of you move towards a more secure attachment style. hmm Um, the book also talks about like dating, right? Dating and exploring and looking at those sort of red flags, those cues from the very beginning in conversation. Is this person that you're looking at? Do they have more of a secure attachment style? Can you feel comfortable with them? Why you feel why you feel attracted to them? Um, and whether it's somebody you want to kind of pursue and the reasons why you might want to pursue them. Are you attracted to them because you're anxious and they're avoidant, or vice versa? Or do they have more of a secure attachment style and that just kind of feels like boring to you because, they're not what you normally go to? Um, let's see. There's a anxious and avoidant interplay where, let's say, I'm anxious and I want to pull you closer, right? So I talk to you more and I demand more attention from you. And why aren't you answering me? And why aren't you sort of spending more time with me? And you're always doing something else. So demanding more attention. And then the avoidant person says, oh, I'll give you some attention, but then only this much because then I'm not comfortable anymore. And so they're avoidant. The more they avoid, the more the anxious person tries to pull closer. The more the anxious person tries to pull you closer, the more the avoidant person pushes away. And so you've got that interplay between both people, and that escalates into arguments. And then but it also kind of keeps people together because they're comfortable with that tension. Comfortable, they're familiar with that tension. There's a better word. They're familiar with that tension. As an anxious person, you might think, well, if he's not finding my faults or she's not finding my faults, then they're not correct, right? They must have missed it. I know I have some self-esteem issues, and so if they're not pointing those out to me, then I need that to have like a reality check. So there's some of that falls into the anxious and avoidant um, dynamic as well. Some self-esteem issues. Okay, so that's essentially what is in the part three of the book, which is what's called when attachment styles clash, right? So that's that interplay between the styles. I like that this book also gives principles and examples of secure attachment as well. So you want to know not only, okay, what I'm doing that's perhaps not as adaptive, but you want to know what you can do that is adaptive. So adaptive meaning secure. So it talks about, effective communication and don't play games like, oh, I'm just going to a game would be not responding to a text or a phone call for a day or a week or whatever the time is that you think is an appropriate time to be waiting before you respond so that you don't seem too needy. That would be a game. A secure attachment would be, no, I like you and I'm telling you I like you. And let's plan to do a thing. Okay, let's go. That would be a secure attachment. Above board, front, no game playing. Let's see. It also gives you some tips about breaking up and how to take care of yourself while you're going through a breakup. Because sometimes when you are making changes to improve the way you communicate, the other person doesn't necessarily want to follow and change themselves as well. So sometimes there can be a breakup, right? So it's about self care and about managing and not to be ashamed. And one thing that I found that was really interesting about in this book is when it talked about breaking up, and how when you look at the past relationship in retrospect, that you think it was all wonderful. That's an anxious attachment tendency, is to look at past relationships as, oh, it was so wonderful back then in retrospect. But when you were in it, um, there were a lot of problems that you were identifying as well. Let's see. So, yeah, and then chapter 12 talks about working things out, principles for dealing with conflict. I really like this chapter, really, because it tells you how to manage conflict in your relationship. So, for instance, it talks about show basic concern for the other person's well-being. Right? I care about you. What can I do to support you? Maintaining focus on the problem, not deterring from the subject. You can be there and attend to the person's problem and really kind of listen to them. Refrain from generalizing. So, generalizing like you always say this or you never do that. That's not talking about the problem at hand. That's kind of generalizing and bringing the whole inventory of everything that they've ever done into the situation. And that's not helpful, right? That's not problem solving in the moment. And be willing to engage and effectively communicate your feelings and needs. So that would be part of assertiveness training, assertiveness communication. It touches on some of those things as well. So in all, I really enjoyed this book. It was a good read. It had my attention throughout the beginning, towards and throughout to the end. What I really like about it is how practical it is. It's not just theoretical. It gives a lot of point form sort of things so that you can take notes, and I certainly did. Um, Point form notes really helps me to kind of conceptualize so that I can remember, okay, yeah, this is that. I can identify now what an attachment style is, what attachment style somebody is manifesting, and how to move from one to the other in a healthier way. I like that. It also gave a lot of examples. Of course, I'm sure that there's fictitious names and ages and so on, but it gave examples of people to illustrate what the authors are talking about. It's a really good read. I recommend it absolutely. So there's my synopsis. There's my my book review. As my voice is getting a little rough now, I'm going to just sign off. Hope that this was useful, helpful, entertaining in some way. Onward and upward. I'll see you at the next time.